Greetings. Some who see the title of this video might wonder, wait, another video on the Katz fiasco? Isn't that old news? And in reply, I would note that unfortunately, it could be argued that from certain circles, there has continued to be gaslighting on the subject of the Katz sock puppet. So with that in mind, I wanted to share and briefly comment on a couple of recent statements which have been made. And the first, admittedly, will be the more concerning of the two, while the second might be more easily treated as possibly being due to a mere misunderstanding. And with that, we begin with a statement that our good friend, our right honorable friend, Kelly Richardson, made when he appeared on Berean TV a little over 2 weeks ago. And to give a little bit of background to this clip that I'm going to show, I got to interact with the good doctor that evening. It was on the night of August 22nd. And however, before I came on, he spoke for roughly 40 or so minutes, and then I joined the panel. And at the time that I joined, I had not yet heard what the good doctor had said before I joined. However, once I had joined the panel, our friend, Dr. Kelly, proposed a sort of truce, hinting that one tacit stipulation would be that we both cease to discuss stuff from the past. And the good doctor stated that he himself had pivoted away from these topics long ago. Now, after the show, when I went back and watched what the good doctor had said before I joined, I honestly was troubled to see that he was still pushing the Katz line, telling the audience that he confirmed that Katz is real. Not merely that he believes it, but that he confirmed that Katz is real, and telling the audience that he has, that Katz has been kept secret because of a confidentiality agreement between Brown and the mysterious professor. And, perhaps most troubling of all, in my opinion, he even stated that they have an audio recording of Katz, which they might release if the hidden professor grants them permission to do so. In short, while Dr. Kelly depicted himself as pivoting away from the subject long ago, the last time he discussed it was actually that very evening. So consider this excerpt, which will run for a little less than 3 minutes.
What happened with that whole situation, and you heard me firsthand when you and I talked, was I honest with you? I was being completely honest with you. I was like, hey, Brother Berean, and you asked me questions. Why won't Majors just bring Richard Katz and put him out there publicly? And so what I said I said, he can't. He told him not to. If the man tell him not to, and being a pastor, and you do something anyway.
And he said he wanted to keep, yes.
I can't make him do anything.
Yes.
Right? So what began to happen is, more videos came out. It went from, saying that, all kinds of jokes that it went from, Majors created Richard Katz to Pastor Kelly's the brain behind Richard Katz. And Brother Berean, again, you was there, and I talked with you, so I'm saying this, family, it's easy for you to say, hey, why come Pastor Kelly won't throw his own cousin under the bus? Wait a minute. Listen to how you guys sound. You know what I mean? I believe my cousin and confirmed. Regardless, I can't put the information out there, but I believe, and whenever he decides to, if he gets the okay, he has audio. Right. But anyway, I'm saying this, Brother Berean, as a pastor, it's so much stuff that you privy to that you can't share. If you do, you can get in trouble for doing so.
Confidentiality, yes.
Confidentiality. Right. The courts can't even take me to court to tell on someone that confided in me. So many pastors, and Brother Berean, you as a pastor, you led assemblies, many pastors have gotten in trouble because of them putting information out there of their own parishioners when they decide to leave that particular church. So I'm saying all of this to say, even with that, when it comes to my cousin, whether you guys agree or disagree, that's my family. And I'm not going to throw my family up under the bus regardless.
Yes.
And I don't expect you to do the same thing with your family. I don't expect you to throw your family up under the bus.
Okay, look, I certainly, me personally, I certainly am not expecting anyone to publicly go after their own family. But in a situation like this, perhaps silence would have been better than gaslighting one's own supporters, right? Recall that once the cat sock puppet was exposed, Kelly dug in deeper. He could have just been silent, but he dug in deeper. He pushed the narrative that Katz actually had to go into hiding because his career was threatened. The good doctor later supported Benaya's claim that the Tel Aviv-based professor of Hebrew linguistics was actually a man in Georgia with no academic background in Hebrew, right? And honestly, none of that was necessary. And now we see this claim that they have an audio recording of Katz, which they may or may not release. I mean, let's not mince words here, right? That is a clear sign that that side is still contemplating new ways to gaslight audiences. Maybe they'll release some sort of audio file, and maybe they never will. But in the meantime, I think it's fair to say that that was an obvious trial balloon of sorts, right? Testing a new idea to see how it might resonate with the public. So with that in mind, if we can be blunt for a moment, let's not pretend that the Katz fiasco is a dead topic if that side is still flirting with new ways to deceive the public on precisely that subject, right? Food for thought. But moving on from that, I'd like to turn to the second example, which, as I just alluded to a little while ago, strikes me as less egregious, right? Perhaps this one was due to some sort of a misunderstanding, but at the very least, it's curious enough to warrant a response. You see, last night on Sista E's channel, in the video you see on your screen, there was a sort of review of Vocab Malone's recent discussion with GMS Virginia. Now, I say a sort of review because there really wasn't much discussion on the points that were raised by either side, whether that side be Vocab or GMS. But nonetheless, there was sort of a peripheral discussion with, Vocab's interaction with GMS as the centerpiece. But in the midst of that very long conversation, what caught my attention is that one of Sista E's guests brought up the pews and Katz, claiming such things were used to divert, that those who were involved in the pews discussion used the pews discussion and the Katz fiasco to divert from the fact that they were allegedly getting beaten up on other topics such as history and DNA, right? And fascinatingly, Sista E seems to briefly agree with that depiction. So consider this clip, which will run for about a minute.
But looking back over time, that was just another tactic, the whole pews and the whole Katz. What that came about was they were losing the historical argument. They were losing the genetic argument. So all of a sudden during that time, because that's what we were talking about, I think Nephroniti was going on at the time, the whole thing about WIDA and Spain and Portugal and all of that stuff and the DNA. So it seems like it was a tactic. We need a distraction. Oh, there's Pastor Kelly. Let's attack him. Let's attack that information. Let's make it all about cats. And that turned the attention away from the real debate, the real information that needed to be dealt with.
Yep. And that's key. That's very important.
So Sista E co-signs that, huh? Let me be the first to say that my involvement in the discussion on the pews predates their discussions on history or West Africa and especially genetics, right? As far back as 2016, people were posting claims about the pews in Vocab's forum. And it was in that year that I composed a post for that forum, which attempted to cover the methodological basics. And, after a few years of me attempting to engage proponents of that view in a couple different forums on Facebook, someone recommended Kelly Richardson. So in 2019, I made a couple videos attempting to engage him on that topic, right? And I'm sure most of you know how that went from there. But, as for historical questions, it's my understanding that first Nephroniti and then later on Faithful in 93 put out quite a few hours of discussion on a myriad of topics which were raised. And interestingly, in the case of Faithful in 93, a truce was proposed with them as well, right? Another one of these truces where we just drop it. But whatever the case, if one wants to discuss the historical stuff, I imagine that one can engage Nephroniti and Faithful in 93's respective videos, right? They're still out there. But as for me, in my case, I wasn't really involved in the discussions about West Africa and history and stuff like that. But my approach would be a bit different, as I would want to discuss the preliminary methodological basics. And I suppose if someone would like to discuss that, I'm willing to discuss that with them, right? Just reach out to me. Let me know. We can discuss it maybe in the Rumble Room. But, that aside, with regards to the DNA, let's be honest, I did get into that subject. I have not been running from the DNA, right? Recall that there was actually a challenge for people to move on from the pews to the subject of DNA, right? It was claimed that people were scared to explore specifically Teo's model. And once I actually got into Teo's model, the twins complained bitterly that I did precisely what the challenge had requested people to do, which was move from the pews to Teo's model on DNA. And surely Sista E knows that I've been willing to get into the DNA, which, when it comes to her crowd's approach on that topic, has, it's amounted to little more than a misunderstanding of how GEDmatch Oracle works, right? Look, just last July, Berean aired my video on Teo's Autosomal approach, and Sista E joined the panel that night. And she was, with all due respect, she was trying mightily to change the topic. So surely Sista E knows that I'm not using the pews controversy to run from the DNA, right? Surely she knows that I'm willing to discuss DNA and that I invite discussion on DNA. Let's be honest. I'm sure she knows that it's folks like the Teo twins who don't want to discuss DNA anymore. And since we're on this topic, I think it would be worthwhile to note that I recall that back in November of 2020, Sista E had a panel discussion on her channel titled "A Terrible Week for Urban Apologists," right? And it had the Teo twins and Kelly Richardson on as guests. And, going back and listening to that show can make for an interesting experience, right? At the time, they were claiming victory on both the pews and DNA, right? And they were claiming victory on the pews because Kelly and Brown had claimed that the scholar David Bunis had confirmed an entire Hebrew sentence on the pews, right? And they were claiming victory on DNA because they felt they did well in a discussion on GEDmatch Oracle with GCon, which had aired on Berean's channel, right? But when you look back at that show now, with the hindsight of the present day, perhaps we might say that the victory lap was a bit premature, right? Because, subsequently it turned out that Brown had badly misrepresented Bunis, so much so that they've actually tried to scrub their own panel discussion, the discussion which first invoked Bunis. They've tried to scrub that discussion from the internet, setting videos to private. And as for GEDmatch Oracle, it seems that they no longer want to discuss that anymore now that the nuances of the tool have been explained. But putting that aside, as for Katz, I did not bring up Katz to distract from anything, right? I just wanted to focus on the markings on the pews. It was Brown and his supporters who tried to use the Katz emails to shut down any further discussion on the markings. They wanted, right? It was them who they expected people to just accept that a scholar had spoken on the matter, and they were hoping that that would just end the conversation, right? It was only because they tried to use Katz as a mic drop that it had to be addressed, right? And the controversy snowballed from there because they have tried to defend the initial deception with still more deception. And I already gave some examples. For example, saying that Katz had to go into hiding because, they unveiled a new email from Katz saying that he's going into hiding because his job was threatened, right? That's an example of them using more deception to defend the initial deception. And it's really unfortunate. But that's why the Katz thing snowballed. And this takes us back to the first point, which was covered in this video, right? It was less than 3 weeks ago that Kelly was on Berean, still pushing the narrative on Katz, right? If they intend to keep trying to defend the Katz sock puppetry, they should not be surprised if others continue to address what they say. But it seems like, really, honestly, it seems like gaslighting when one continues to push the Katz narrative and then suddenly says, oh my gosh, why are you still on this? When they receive a reply, right? I don't know. That seems unfair. But I don't know. I'll stop here. As always, I welcome any comments, questions, and even criticisms that others might have. Unlike that crowd, I don't censor comments here. So feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And with that, I say, God bless.
Finish. But I'm going to need you to stop saying that he influences me, because Pastor Kelly does not influence me. Dante does not influence me. Teo doesn't influence me. I have my own mind. So can you please stop saying that, and you can continue on.
All right. So I'm sorry if you feel offended. What I'm saying is, to say that one person influences another person is not saying the second person does not have a mind, nor does it mean the second person can't disagree with the person who's influencing them. But the signs of that influence, unfortunate influence, is there in, for example, the dismantling of your forum. I know we're not supposed to bring up the Katz fiasco, but even that, it's become clear that, deep down inside you knew that the Katz thing was a lie. But that crowd pushed you into this position where you had to even let Benaiah come on and gaslight your audience and say that the people who told the truth about Katz need to apologize to the one guy who lied about Katz. That's a sign of that influence, that negative influence, that you know, it's not to say you don't have your own mind, but it's saying maybe people are taking advantage of your loyalty.
He got it. I gotta agree with him there.
Kelly, I think you're muted. Kelly's muted.
No, I said I gotta agree with him there, because that other video that came out where you was talking about you're 95% sure and all of that stuff right there after a year or two, or all of that stuff was that all was a bad orthodox.
I really don't care about what anybody says about what I said in a private conversation. Let that be known. I had a private conversation and I was in my emotions at that time because I was upset because I saw my community fighting amongst each other and I didn't like it. But Moore did something that was very disingenuous, took a private conversation of me saying that I was upset about what was going on and ran with it. So I would prefer
that was a private.
Okay, that was a private conversation.
Can we talk about why that went public though?
But you speaking your heart. Go ahead, Pastor Kelly.
My point is this. A lot of us are upset and we'll say things in a private conversation. And I've always said, I don't know what Moray Brown, far as if he's wrong or he's right, I don't have proof. And still, we don't have proof, right or wrong or indifferent. Nobody truly knows if Katz is here, if he's not. That's all I've ever said.
The whole conversation sound bad. All of y'all was in the background saying that y'all don't even speak to Pastor Brown no more, and you're not. All of that sounds shaky right now from what you're saying. I want Pastor Kelly to go because you get ready to. It's going sideways. It's going sideways.
Well, let me just say this.
You backpedaling.
No, I'm not.